you're listening to Visions of Rock, and we're here with Pat Sansone from Wilco. Thanks for talking to us, Pat. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. I'm excited to hear about your photography. I mean, obviously you're a talented musician, but you're also a photographer. How did you get interested in that at first?
Well, I've kind of always been interested in it. My dad was a hobbyist, photographic hobbyist. He went through a period when I was 7, 8, 9, those years where he was shooting all the time. And he had access to a dark room in our hometown, and I would go with him to the dark room and develop and print with him. So I guess that's where it started, just kind of hanging out with my dad while he was in his photography phase.
So when did you finally get around to picking up the camera yourself, and what was that experience like?
I just started kind of collecting cameras that I would find in thrift stores and things, maybe when I was in my mid-20s, and got interested in shooting with the Holga and Diana cameras and kind of like toy cameras. So that's kind of where it started, I guess.
What were you first shooting?
Mostly kind of abstract stuff. I never really shot people very much. It was more kind of small details, like in cities. And I really love William Eggleston. He was a photographer that I kind of discovered by accident and really kind of related to what he shot. And I grew up in Mississippi and spent a lot of time on, roaming around old country roads and stuff like that. So when I first picked up the camera, those were kind of the things that I would capture.
What is it that inspires you or kind of captures your attention about photography?
I think it's good for me to do something creative that's not musical, because so much of my life is based around music, which I love, but I think it's a good exercise for my creative part of my brain to do something that's outside of my profession, where I don't feel a lot of pressure to be necessarily good at it. It's just kind of more for myself. And I don't have any training in photography, but it allows me to do something just for the sheer fun of it. With photography, I'm still able to be surprised by the results, whereas with music, that element of surprise is a lot rarer.
The two must complement each other in some way. I mean, a song has the story, the beginning, middle, and end. Do you see pictures being framed in that same type of structure?
I think they can. I think the ones that are good do, So the occasional picture that really stands out, there's the obvious image, but then there's something underneath that suggests a story that maybe wasn't even apparent when you're shooting.
Which would you say is more important, the subject that you're shooting or the actual camera you're using? You talk a lot about the camera you use.
I think it just depends on the camera. I think with digital, it seems like the subject is more important because there's a concreteness about it. It's more about the photographer's eye and the actual subject matter, because you're getting more of an authentic representation of what you're shooting.
Do you feel like your personality comes through in your photography? Growing up in Mississippi, your experience with your dad, does that come through in what you shoot or how you shoot it?
I'm not exactly sure how, but I would have to say it does. I mean, I think no matter what creative endeavor you're in, that stuff is going to come through, whether it's music or photography or writing. If what you're doing is true to yourself, then yourself is definitely going to be in there.
Tell us about the charity that you're shooting for.
It's the Preservation Resource Center of New Orleans. After Katrina, there's been a lot of rebuilding and reconstruction of that area, and it's working to help keep the historical nature of that area intact so that when the rebuilding does happen, it doesn't just completely take away the personality and the feeling of that area, which is really important to the people that have lived there for years and years.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and obviously the work you're doing is going to benefit people in New Orleans. I'm sure they appreciate that. And again, thanks for hanging out with us.
My pleasure.
You're listening to Visions of Rock.